Stranger Things is a show about a bunch of misfits that travel into an alternate dimension and face off against the forces of evil. But beneath that is a group of emotionally traumatized characters who desperately need therapy. This is every major character in Stranger Things explained and psychologically diagnosed, starting off with Eleven. Eleven may have superpowers, but she also has the emotional capability of a houseplant. But it's not really her fault. See, being ripped away from her mother at birth, dehumanized, and raised in a lab by a man with a god complex does some pretty major emotional damage. Eleven experiences early neglect and abuse, government experimentation, emotional withdrawal, hypervigilance, and limited social skills. The only early attachment she does form is with the lab's manipulative head scientist, Dr. Brenner. This points to a diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder and complex PTSD. But it doesn't stop there for Eleven. When she finally does escape the lab, Eleven struggles to adjust to normal life. She has social anxiety and faces difficulty with basic social cues due to her stunted childhood development. She also wrestles with emotional dysregulation, which is unfortunately common in trauma survivors. On top of that, Eleven is stuck in what famed psychologist Erik Erikson called identity versus role confusion. She can't quite figure out who she really is as a person due to her restricted ability to explore interests growing up. This leads Eleven to try out multiple versions of herself, constantly shifting between her birth identity, Jane, being a powerful superhero, a loyal girlfriend, and even a monster in the eyes of society. Joyce Byers may be the lovable mom of the show, but she's more like a cat stuck in a bathtub when it comes to staying calm. Especially when her son Will disappears into the Upside Down and she's convinced he's lost forever. When Will does return, Joyce becomes paranoid, overprotective, obsessive, and hypervigilant, all of which are symptoms commonly associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, which makes sense as a diagnosis for Joyce, though it's also arguable that a diagnosis of complex PTSD fits Joyce better than traditional PTSD due to her prolonged trauma from the Upside Down over multiple seasons. Max is a skater girl and a total tomboy. She's the kind of girl the guys at school can't decide if they're into or intimidated by. But beyond that, she's had a pretty tough life growing up. Max's parents get divorced early on, and she's emotionally abused by her stepbrother Billy. She's forced apart with the life she's used to in California when her mother and stepfather decide to move across the country to Hawkins, Indiana. While she isn't exactly close with her abusive stepbrother, his death right in front of her leaves Max with an intense sense of survivor's guilt. She's haunted by the idea that she didn't do enough to stop Billy's death. But her guilt goes deeper than that. Due to her strained relationship with him, Max admits that at times she actually wished Billy would die. So when he actually does die, Max isn't just grieving his death, but the twisted, unresolved mess of their relationship and the guilt of ever wanting him to die at all. So instead of processing her grief in a healthy way by talking to friends and family, Max disconnects, displaying what's called avoidant grieving, a coping mechanism where an individual tries to suppress or avoid thoughts and feelings related to loss. Max's trauma is chronic and relationship-oriented. She shows emotional dysregulation, avoidance, and trust issues, and uses defense mechanisms like sarcasm and aggression to mask her vulnerability and grief, making Max a strong candidate for a complex PTSD diagnosis. Will Byers is the quiet kid in class that nobody cares about until he disappears. He grows up poor, with a father that abandons the family. He's shy, but happy, and has a super close relationship with his mother and older brother Jonathan. Will's life is about as interesting as watching paint dry, until one day, when he's sucked into the Upside Down and finds himself fighting for his life against a giant Venus flytrap. And unless you want to face off against a Demogorgon like Will, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Anyways, Will spends an extended period feeling trapped and hopeless in an alternate dimension, and even after his rescue, the experience stays with him. When he does return from the Upside Down, he's possessed by a creature from that same world, which only deepens his trauma and points to another diagnosis of complex PTSD. Due to his time in the Upside Down, Will also likely suffers from something psychologists call attachment disruption. Attachment disruption refers to a break or disturbance in the emotional bond between a child and their primary caregiver, and is often caused by separation or trauma. Which makes sense in Will's case, considering he spent some time away from his mother, in what some might consider to be the world's worst camping trip. His once close relationship with his mother suffers, and because of this, he lacks feelings of safety and security, and becomes distrusting and more hesitant of the intentions of others. It's worth mentioning that while Will does suffer from attachment disruption, he doesn't quite tick off enough boxes for an official attachment disorder diagnosis. Mike Wheeler is the heart of the show. Like his friends, Mike's kind of a loser in school, and doesn't have much confidence when it comes to talking to girls. He has a clear savior complex toward Eleven and Will, but it manifests in very different ways. While Mike's savior complex towards Will is grounded in loyalty and friendship, it manifests differently towards Eleven. His savior complex towards Eleven is shaped by the fact that she's the first and only girl in his life to give him pretty much any attention at all, which quickly results in him developing a crush on her. While Mike does genuinely care for Eleven, much of that care is driven by the validation and attention she offers him, which makes his savior complex towards Eleven more complicated and somewhat self-focused, unlike the purely loyal and protective nature of his bond with Will. Despite being involved in some pretty traumatic events, Mike doesn't really experience PTSD like many other members of the cast do. Instead of exhibiting PTSD symptoms, Mike tends to respond to stressful situations with loyalty and occasional frustration. But these reactions align more with a normal adolescent development rather than with a clinical diagnosis. So Mike may be a little off the wall sometimes and, like many other people, could probably benefit from some talk therapy. But he almost certainly wouldn't qualify for a major psychological disorder. Lucas has some interesting psychological development over the course of the series. Like his friends, he's a loser in school. Lucas is very logical and cautious by nature, which causes him to be distrustful of others at first. He sometimes prioritizes self-preservation over group unity, which may seem selfish to others, but is actually consistent with his rational approach to decision-making. Lucas initially lacks confidence, but his relationship with Max helps him come out of his shell. But it isn't until season 4 where Lucas experiences a deeper internal identity struggle. He faces cognitive dissonance, which is a state of psychological discomfort when a person holds conflicting values or beliefs. In Lucas's case, he's torn between publicly associating with his lifelong friends in the Hellfire Club, the school's losers, and the basketball jocks, who treat him like one of the popular kids he always wanted to be. While he feels a strong connection to the Hellfire Club, he also craves the social acceptance offered by the basketball team. And he ultimately decides to stick with his lifelong friend group, the school's losers, despite how it affects his public image and popularity. Like Mike, Lucas experiences traumatic events, but doesn't fit the mold for a psychological disorder like PTSD. Vecna is as evil as Voldemort, and speaking of which, somehow has less of a nose than him as well. Vecna displays obvious psychopathic tendencies, such as strategic manipulation, torturing animals, and tormenting, and later murdering his family at just 12 years old, which points to an obvious diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder with sadistic tendencies. Like many others with antisocial personality disorder, he experiences feelings of grandiosity, believing he's intellectually and morally superior to others, which makes him a strong candidate for narcissistic personality disorder. As if Vecna wasn't screwed up enough in the head already, he's kidnapped, dehumanized, and scientifically experimented on for years, leading to another diagnosis of complex PTSD. Jim Hopper is the rugged chief of the Hawkins Police Department, and while he may have the appearance of a grizzly bear, he also has a soft spot like a teddy bear. The death of his daughter and the collapse of his marriage make Hopper weary and slow to open up to others. He has a savior complex, risking his life to enter the Upside Down to rescue Will, and later to protect and care for Eleven, despite the dangers involved in each. Hopper is extremely loyal to those who he considers close, but his savior complex comes more from a place of failure. A failure to save his daughter from cancer, and a failure to save his marriage. Hopper experiences many traumatic events over the course of his life, and exhibits symptoms such as emotional dysregulation, hypervigilance, avoidance, a negative self-concept, and difficulty forming and maintaining relationships. So, a psychologist would likely diagnose him with complex PTSD. Hopper also has some obsessive, controlling, and perfectionistic traits associated with OCD, but doesn't quite fit the compulsive end of the criteria required for a full diagnosis. He treats alcohol as an escape, using it to numb his complex emotions. So, alcohol use disorder also seems like a fair diagnosis. Hopper also expresses symptoms of a depressive disorder, such as social withdrawal, low mood, and feelings of hopelessness. But it's probably more accurate to view these symptoms as secondary to his complex PTSD, rather than as something like a major depressive disorder diagnosis. Dustin's like a mix between a calculator and a golden retriever. He's loyal, enthusiastic, and brilliant, but has some confidence issues growing up due to his nerdy tendencies and a rare genetic disorder affecting his facial structure. Not even Dustin's best friends believe that he can get a girlfriend. Despite this, Dustin uses humor to overcompensate for his low confidence in social situations, but eventually does begin to come into his own through Steve's mentorship. Like Dustin's core friend group, Steve sees Dustin for his brilliance and humor, but unlike Dustin's friends, Steve is one of the popular kids in school, and having his validation means a lot for Dustin's confidence and development. Like Lucas and Mike, Dustin is put into traumatic situations throughout the show, but doesn't quite develop traditional symptoms of PTSD or any other psychological disorder. If anything, Dustin shows optimism, resilience, and strong emotional regulation, all of which are strong protective psychological factors that help him in stressful situations. Nancy Wheeler's the human embodiment of a teacher's pet. She's a straight-A student who's at times overlooked for her intelligence by men, which causes her to develop a constant need to prove her worth to others. Nancy gets dragged into the events of the show due to the disappearance of her friend Barbara. And despite her goody-two-shoes reputation, Nancy's adventurous spirit and relentless curiosity lead her into uncomfortable and often dangerous situations. Throughout the series, Nancy experiences survivor's guilt, anxiety, and depressive symptoms that reflect her struggle to process trauma, indicating a possible adjustment disorder diagnosis. While Nancy does have control-oriented tendencies, they don't quite manifest into something like OCD or OCPD. She also shows some signs of PTSD, but not enough to meet the full diagnostic criteria. As a closeted lesbian in 1980s Indiana, Robin is naturally hypervigilant and cautious to the opinions of others. She gets restless easily, talks quickly, sometimes jumping from topic to topic, and occasionally struggles with focus. So the diagnosis of ADHD seems likely. Robin also admits to feeling awkward in social situations, especially in romantic contexts. But her moments of awkwardness don't seriously impair her functioning, so it'd probably be more accurate to say she has social anxiety tendencies rather than social anxiety disorder. Dr. Brenner may be the brilliant mastermind behind scientific experiments at Hawkins' laboratory, but he's also manipulating children to create weapons of mass destruction. So he's sort of like a daycare crossover between Dr. Oppenheimer and Dr. Frankenstein. He lacks empathy, seeing the numbered children in his care not as individuals being deprived of a healthy upbringing, but as experimental guinea pigs to further his scientific research. Dr. Brenner acts with Machiavellian logic, having an ends justify the means philosophy, and believing his experiments are for humanity's greater good, even if they are detrimental towards 11 and the other numbered children. Dr. Brenner also expresses feelings of grandiosity, seeing himself as uniquely qualified to guide humanity's future, even if it means experimenting on children as a means to create weapons. Despite having little genuine concern for the well-being of the numbered children, he manipulates them, instructing them to refer to him as Papa, which provides a false sense of security under a caring parental guise. He even goes as far to exploit the children, artificially manufacturing trauma to further enhance their powers. All of this points to a strong case for narcissistic personality disorder. Brenner is also rigid and fixated on order and obedience. He micromanages every aspect of the lab and the children's development. He's obsessed with results and progress, making obsessive-compulsive personality disorder another likely diagnosis. So, who from Stranger Things do you think needs therapy the most? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. And subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. Thanks for watching.